Hello, everyone, and welcome to Astrology Now. And in this episode about the new moon in Cancer, we peer into the heavens and attempt to make sense of why everyone's crying, reorganising their photo albums, or calling their mother. So I'm Sheryl Gotchell here with everwise astrologer Babula Clement. And today we're floating on the waters into the new moon in Cancer, the zodiac's queen of cozy. So think bubble baths, nostalgic cravings like mummy used to make, and emotional depths and an overwhelming urge to redecorate your living room. So, but wait, there's more because the new moon is snuggled up with none other than Jupiter, the cosmic Santa Claus of the zodiac. So, yes, the moon and Jupiter are conjunct, and we'll talk more about that. So, I expect big feelings, big blessings, and possibly big bowls of comfort food. So, Jupiter doesn't do anything halfway, and I can personally vouch for that. So, prepare for emotional epiphanies, generosity overload, or a dramatic declaration of love to your cat. So,
Oh,
in this episode, we'll dive into all that. So join us as we navigate the waves of this watery, feel everything energy without hopefully losing our floaties. So welcome back to another episode, Babula.
thank
Um,
you, Cheryl. Wonderful introduction as always.
we've had a lot of planetary movement over the last 6, 7 months. So I thought we might just take a beat and quickly recap on the energies that are moving in the background right now. So, and you can correct me if I got any of this wrong, but in November last year, we had Pluto move into Aquarius. In March this year, we had Lilith move into Scorpio and will be there until December this year. Also, a couple of days later in March, Neptune moved into Aries until 2039. In April, Mars moved into Leo, and 10th of June, Jupiter moved into Cancer. And there's a lot more to come. So that's a lot of planetary movement and actually, Babula, adaptation required on our part to keep our head above water so we're not swallowed up by those shifting sands. So, how are you progressing, navigating, floating in all of that?
Yes, just lots of adjusting and adapting and um, trying to stay as close to the moment as possible, or just dealing with the day as the day comes and whatever arises. There is just so much moving, so much is shifting, so much is changing, so much going on in the world. And because we're now in the Cancerian period of the year,
Mm.
I think it's very helpful to keep our focus, close to home, close to our own personal world. And we were just chatting a bit before and saying, we both feel like a holiday, but we don't really want to go anywhere.
Yes.
That's quite a Cancerian sort of a response. You just want to curl up somewhere quiet
Mm.
and just be quiet and have someone bring you beautiful big bowls of soup or something like a mother.
While you were just saying that, the word came to me. It's not that I'm looking for a holiday, I'm looking for sanctuary.
Yeah.
That's what it is. I just feel like there's so much going on in the world. There's so much going on in personal life, just nothing too terrible, but just need to be there for other people or just feeling tired and it's too much to do, not
Mm.
through choice always, but just
Mm.
needs to be done. So,
Mhm.
and that Cancerian energy, that moon in Cancer is now saying, well, what are your needs? What do you need to nurture you?
That's exactly right. That's right. It's on the 10th of June, Jupiter, mighty Jupiter moved into Cancer and will be in Cancer for 12 to 13 months. And on the 21st, of course, we had the winter solstice here in the Southern Hemisphere when the sun is in Cancer. So it's an interesting solstice moment this year because as the sun moves into Cancer, it joins with Jupiter.
Mm,
And as you said before, Jupiter expands and brings increase to everything that it touches. And then we move into the new moon, which is
mm,
at 4 degrees and 7 minutes of Cancer, right on Jupiter,
Yeah.
right on that Jupiter at the very end of 3 degrees. So that's pretty extraordinary to have a new moon conjunct one of these slower moving planets.
Mm.
And, normally we would say about Jupiter on a new moon, we would give it lots of positive words and really sort of speak it up as a very positive influence, and it is, Jupiter generally brings a very positive, abundant, hopeful, uplifting
Yeah.
um, energy with it. And on the new moon, it just can be, but it can also be so much that it becomes too much.
Yes.
And we're in a water sign, and water sign, as you said before, is all about, what we feel and our emotions and our emotional responses
Yeah.
um, and what's going on, in family and at home. And it is a lot. And we've all been through a great deal in the last few years anyway,
Mm.
with not a lot of opportunity to really, feel like we've had enough sanctuary and time out.
Yeah. And I think I'm already feeling the effects. So it's like it's taken sensitivity to the limits,
Yeah,
and that's where I feel the only way I can process that and deal with it is to actually withdraw like the crab into its shell, just
yeah.
dig down into the sand and bye world, you know.
That's and that's an appropriate response when we've got these
Mm.
energies moving through the sign of Cancer. It's like life saying and encouraging, if it's at all possible, to do exactly that.
Yeah.
It's interesting that a water sign always comes before a fire sign.
Mm.
So the fire signs really inject with a lot of energy and vitality, but prior to that, we need a bit of withdrawal and time out and quiet to process sensitivity and feelings and all the undercurrents that might be going on in the unconscious, because Cancer's ruled by the moon,
Yeah.
which does represent the unconscious. And you mentioned that earlier about family and photographs and memories. Cancer and the moon ruling Cancer, that's an energy that holds memory of the past.
Mm.
And and so we're thinking about, lineage, parents, childhood,
Mm.
um, where we came from, where do I belong, or thinking about, as you said, your mother's wonderful cooking, or, the favorite things she used to make, and you wish she was here right now to make it for you because it felt so good. It's
Yeah.
that sort of a thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, my daughter is has Sun in Cancer, and what was I going to say? I've just completely forgot what I what I was going to say about.
about memories and food and
Oh
recipes.
yes, because she has a memory like an elephant.
Yeah.
She will say to me things like, "Mum, do you remember when?" Like I'm thinking, "Gosh, how old were you then? Two?" Like, and she'd say, "Do you remember that button?" I go, "Oh, vaguely, I don't know." She has all these, because important memories are established when you're young too.
Yeah.
But yeah, and she has memories of her nonna as well, who was always in the kitchen cooking, like the mother and grandmother that she was. So, and she loves to be around that sort of energy. Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
So it's all about nurturing and how
Mm,
we give nurturing, and how open are we to receiving nurturing, and our emotional needs. What do we need to feel comfortable and at ease in our own body, in our own home, in our own life, and
mm,
so for those who know their chart, at least enough to know where Cancer is in their chart, that the house where this particularly around that 4 degrees of Cancer sits, is the area of life where we're going to be feeling this most strongly, that sense of belonging or not belonging.
yeah.
Do we feel safe and comfortable and at ease, or don't we?
I was just going to bring that up about safety and security. Yeah,
Yeah.
somewhere where we feel we can be like that. Actually, and among friends, female friends, where you can just drop your bundle. and just be with them and just let it all out. That's a,
Exactly.
mm,
Exactly. And for me, this new moon lands in my 11th house, which is a house of friends, and that's exactly right. And I'm aware I'll be meeting up with you and a group of close friends when this new moon is happening. And it's exactly that, isn't it? Like, it's that being with people where you can just be yourself. Doesn't matter if emotions are flowing. Everyone brings food. There's that sense of comfort. Um, and that is really important in this very fractured, distressed world,
yeah,
that we have places like that, people like that in our lives where we can just relax and be ourselves and feel vulnerable. Vulnerability is such
mm,
an issue in the sign of Cancer.
yeah,
And are we like a crab putting up our walls and a hard shell to protect our vulnerable inner self, or are there people and situations and places where we can let that guard down a bit, and that's so healthy and so healing to have that space.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I think in all of that is that because it's a new moon, so there's new beginnings, and perhaps to reset our relationship with our home and family and where we live and where we belong. Maybe deciding to do things a little bit differently so that we get those needs met, those feelings of nurturing and safety and security.
That's right. And it's very interesting. On the day of this new moon, even leading up to it, even now, we're having this conversation a few days before the new moon. There's a beautiful sextile to Mars. Sextile meaning 60, they're 60 degrees apart. In fact, it's an exact sextile. The new moon's at 4 Cancer, Mars will be at 4 of Virgo. And so, that Mars in Virgo, and Mars moved into Virgo just a week or so ago, and it's here for about 6 weeks, having gone through a long journey through Leo.
Mm,
Um, and that can be really helpful to make decisions, make choices, take some kind of action to support our emotional needs, and it might be, okay, it might get very practical too. I need to clean up this area of my house. I need to do something about the yard, or I need to organize my work
mm,
in a way that gives me more time, more downtime, so that I feel nourished and emotionally, that supports my emotional well-being. Yeah,
mm. I had another thought about that too. I was thinking to Cancer, food is currency, right? So we can use food as a reward, and we might say to ourselves, well, I did a good job on that. I'll just have a piece of this and a piece of that.
that's right.
Or there could be some stress eating to stuff down our emotions too. So, but this is a new moon, so
Mm.
maybe it's a time to look at our relationship with food, and if we become aware of using it in that way, and look at different ways, new ways to deal with that.
It is. And the presence of Jupiter here is going to make that a little bit challenging
I know.
because Jupiter's nature, is more, 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 and more. Um, yes, and then you've got that sextile to Mars in Virgo, which can be the inner health critic and the desire to want to really clean up, pardon me, to clean up our health and improve our
Mm,
diet and get more exercise and to take real action on that. So many of us might actually be working through some health issues to find the right balance, particularly around food, Virgo being the sign of digestion. One more thing I want to say about Mars in Virgo, because it is very relevant currently, especially with this new moon. Mars medically is famously notorious for creating stress and inflammation and agitation in the system. And Virgo is a sign of digestion and health in general. It's the number one medical sign. And Virgo is ruled by Mercury, the nervous system. So I think this is a really important
mm,
moment to really address issues around overstressed nervous system, stress, anxiety, health in general, and what do we need to do to sort of defuse some of that anxiety, and perhaps using Cancer here to lay low a bit and to just take some quiet time out if that's and eat really nourishing food, nourishing warm winter food that's not going to interfere too much and exacerbate the stress and anxiety of Mars in Virgo.
Yeah, absolutely. Now,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, go on.
Well, I just want, unless you had more to say about that, I just wanted to start bringing in all the other planets that are connected
Okay.
to this
I've
new
just
moon
got one more
too.
thing to say about
Yeah,
that with
please.
Jupiter in Moon in Cancer conjunct Jupiter. Is I'm thinking about real estate, people moving, and I was wondering if people have been thinking, well, should I put my house on the market now? When should I do it? Maybe this is an opportune time to do it.
That's right, because of the positive influence of Jupiter.
Hmm.
And it might be a good time. I mean, I'm no expert on these specific areas of astrology, but it could be a good time to sell something because you might get a really good price because that's the
Hmm.
nature of Jupiter. By
Yeah.
the same token, you might buy something and it's a bit overpriced
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
because it feels good,
Yes.
you know?
Got to be
Yeah,
careful.
I think so.
Yes. So disclaimer
Um,
here, Babula and I are no real estate buffs.
no,
You're on
no,
your
don't take financial advice from me.
I was just thinking, I thought, oh, maybe that's good for real estate, but even though.
Yeah. So, I'm wondering okay, I'll just describe it. And some people who are very familiar with astrology will follow this. Others for whom this is quite new find it a bit complex. But there are a lot of other planetary influences
Mm.
impacting this new moon. And when I say that, just very briefly, what I mean is like there's the new moon, conjunct Jupiter. Pardon me. It's all these other planets that might be having a relationship and a conversation with that new moon. And there's the Mars, but we've got over here, there's the hard square to the Jupiter Saturn conjunction,
Mm.
which is sitting in Aries. And I just want to touch on this. We don't want to go into this in a big way because it's just too horrible. But,
Mm.
literally this morning, it's been announced that the United States has just dropped three massive bombs on very specific targets in Iran. So that's a real inflammation of a very volatile situation in the Middle
Mm.
East. And that's pretty dramatic and pretty awful. So this Saturn Neptune conjunction sitting at 1 degrees of Aries, and one of the ways we understand Aries as a sign of war and conflict.
Yeah.
Um, and sextile to Mars, the god of war. And there's also a very tight quincunx to the planet Pluto, a planet of power and destruction
Mm.
and atomic energy. So, and the Neptune part of this in Aries is, you could listen to a dozen different experts and pundits analyzing this situation that all tell you something different. So, who's to know what's really going on? But
Mm.
and Cancer politically, in mundane political astrology, relates very much to the homeland, the country, the protection, the defense of your borders, and so on, and national identity. It comes back to that principle of where do I belong,
Mm.
and am I safe,
Yeah.
right? So sitting here, in our homes, we're pretty comfortable and safe right now.
Mm.
But there are parts in the world right now where that is absolutely not true,
Mm.
for many people. So, and even though we're not in that situation physically, we are energetically all impacted by those things, whether we listen to the news or just choose not to at all.
Yeah.
We are energetically connected and impacted by all that. So it is quite strong. And I think um, taking, if we can, some, just quiet time, and we're at the winter solstice, it is the time to withdraw. That is the medicine that we need, to withdraw and just go as quiet as we can, given whatever circumstances our life is in currently, to take care of ourselves and our loved ones and those that we're close to.
Yeah. I was just thinking about Jupiter in Cancer as the lucky country. You sort of think of that, and I was just saying this morning how lucky we are to be living in Australia, at least for now.
That's right. And we've always been out of harm's way in terms of
Mm,
military invasion and so on.
mm,
But anything can happen in the future, of course, especially
mm.
with modern warfare technology now. But the to just try and really keep everything really simple. And do we find that place of calm inside and sanctuary inside?
Mm.
Um, yeah, and nurture and ask those questions. What does that look like for me right now? What does
Yeah,
nurture and self-care and protection of me and my loved ones look like right now? And on a day-to-day basis, literally.
definitely. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. So yes, it is a very, and as I said, normally you would say, yeah, Jupiter conjunct the moon, how beautiful. And that's true.
Mm.
And there are these other very strong planetary connections to that new moon that bring in these other kind of powerful energies. So it is quite a strong one. The full moon coming up in 2 weeks looks really quite simple, actually. It looks like not nearly as intense.
Yeah, yeah. I was just thinking about that's, I've been looking at Saturn conjunct Neptune, that it just fits in so well with erosion of structures and
Yeah.
dissolving borders and boundaries. But it's not just in the world, it's in cyberspace too. There's a lot of boundaries have been I don't know how dissolved, I guess,
Eroded.
in a way, because we don't are no longer controlled by where we live as to how to know what's going on in the world, even if it's bad news. We've got all those connections all around the place. So, and that's dissolved boundaries too, hasn't it? The
Mm.
internet has dissolved boundaries.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Mm.
The other side of that with the Neptune connection to that Neptune Saturn conjunction is, and how do you know in the midst of all of that what's true and what's not true?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But just coming back to Cancer for a minute in terms of the world stage, I do feel quite strongly, and there's a couple of people that I really do respect their analysis because they're really deep thinkers and very knowledgeable. This is online. I do feel strongly that what's going on in the Middle East has its roots in deep history,
Mm.
and it's hard to unravel all of that because it's complex and it's very, very, very old. And that's very Cancer. It's this tribal, racial, deep historical roots that can get really activated strongly at a time like this. Something very, very old, it feels to me, is playing out,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
has a big impact on the world.
That's been going on for a very long time, hasn't it? For
A
sure.
very, very long
The Middle
time.
East has been in the news ever since I can remember listening to the news.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. So yes, an important new moon, and then we move on to the 27th of June when Mercury goes into Cancer.
Cancer? Does it? Oh,
Sorry, Leo.
that's what I
Sorry,
thought.
Leo, because Mercury is currently in Cancer.
Yeah.
Beg your pardon. Um, and Mercury, I even wrote down Leo, but I said Cancer. Don't ask me why, but that's what I did. So Mercury will go into Leo. So our mind and our thinking process should get a little bit of a lift of energy.
Hmm.
When Mercury's going through a water sign, even mentally, we can feel a bit sort of a little bit sluggish, a little bit low.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we
yeah.
can we can speak boldly, I guess, more boldly, be more confident and expressive, and basically show up in conversations. Whereas before we may have sat on the the wall. What do they call people? Wallflowers. But actually get involved in conversation too.
Yeah,
Yeah. And be playful and creative with words, which I love to do.
that's right. That's true, what you're saying about that, because I've noticed, like every now and then over a period of days and weeks, I'll post a lot of astrological things on Facebook, and then I go through periods where I'm not feeling it, and I just don't. I feel like I have nothing to say, and I've noticed that in the last 2 weeks or so, I've just got really not much to say, and you're right. It's because Mercury's going through Cancer.
Yeah.
There's too much going on internally that I'm processing, and on the home front, and I just don't really even want to particularly express it.
Yep.
But when it goes into Leo, all of a sudden there'll be, I have something to say. That's Mercury in Leo.
It's been in there for a while, stirring things up, but now it's
Yeah.
yes.
Which is why people with Mercury in the water signs are often very quiet. They
Uh,
don't say a lot unless they really have something to say and they're in a situation where they feel very comfortable that they
yeah.
can say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Then we move on into July. So we're moving into some very interesting energies in July. And people often say to me, is it going to get easier anytime soon? And I would like to say generally that please don't ask that question at any time during 2025 because it's a really bumpy year, and July has got a lot. It's not that it's all going to be dreadful. I'm not suggesting that, but there's a lot happening throughout July. On the 4th, there'll be a conjunction of Venus with Uranus at 29 degrees and 52 minutes of Taurus at the very, very end of the sign of Taurus. The following day on the 5th, Venus will go into Gemini. And also on the 5th, Neptune will be stationary and start turning retrograde at 2 degrees. Whenever a planet appears to come to a standstill, either about to turn back and go retrograde, or it's been retrograde and about to move forward, and with the slow planets, that can be even around a week. A number of days while it's just sitting there at that degree, its energy is very, very present and strong. Um, And then on the 7th, the planet Uranus, which has been in Taurus now for 7 years, will leave Taurus and go into Gemini.
Be happy
And
with
yeah, while, Neptune's sitting there stationary.
yeah, yeah.
So what does all that mean? Well, that's where I just go, Neptune, first of all, people very, very often feel tired when Neptune's showing up strongly at any time. Um, we can feel really vulnerable, quite emotional. We can feel a bit confused, a bit drained of energy, that kind of thing. But our imagination, it can be an amazing time if we have any kind of creative um, things in our life that we like to do. It can be very good for creativity, imagination, intuition, that kind of thing.
I wonder how that'll play out in the media because, with Gemini there and unexpected things happening, arising in the media.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge. So,
Oh,
so on the 7th, when Uranus sits at 0 degrees of Gemini for the first time in about 80 years, um, and Uranus gets to about 1.5, I think, degrees of Gemini for a couple of months. Then it'll turn retrograde and slip back into Taurus.
hmm.
And then next year it'll come back to Gemini and stay there for about 7 years. So that's a really powerful combination because there's a few reasons. When Uranus was discovered in 1781, it was discovered in the sign of Gemini. Gemini is ruled by the planet Mercury. And in astrology, we regard Uranus as the higher octave of Mercury. They are both planets that represent the mind
Hmm.
and the nervous system and information and communication pathways and so on.
Yeah.
The Uranus in Gemini, it's very, very mind energy, is very powerful. And yeah, Uranus is all about, disruption and upheavals and chaos and change. There'll be a lot going on in the media. There will be a lot's going on around anything to do with communication, our own personal communication, communication around the planet. I'm suddenly thinking, satellites, God, what'll be going on with all those satellites whizzing
Yeah. Yeah.
around planet Earth? There could be just quite a lot of chaos and mayhem going on in the coming years, but just even over the next couple of months.
Yeah. I was thinking about that because, Gemini is quick and short, basically. Uranus is, again, an air sign. Gemini's like that too. I was thinking we might see an explosion of short formats on social media, like many more reels. We see a
Yep,
lot of reels already, but I think we might have a lot more and
yep,
more alternative channels with AI generated content as well. Um, I think legacy media is going to be just go down, down, down. We'll see more, even more citizen participation in news production.
yep,
And there's going to be a whole intertwining of that too. It's like all over the place.
absolutely.
We'll have to keep up.
So much change. So over the next 7 years, there's going to be massive changes around technology and everything to do with communication. In fact, I saw something yesterday, I forget where it was, a post from somewhere, someone saying that there's someone already wanting to set up another, and they deliberately said it's not social media, it's there was a term they used, I forget what it was. Like real community media. So we're going to see a lot of that. We're going to see lots of new developments around channels of communication. And I'm wondering too whether some nations who have very tight control over media and information, well, that's happening all over the world now more and more, um, over these next 7 years, we could see a lot of those controls tighten, but there will be a lot of pushback because Uranus is also the people pushing back and rebelling and coming up with alternative options
Yeah,
and finding a way around all of these things.
yeah, yeah. So also to remember, just on the media thing, Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, it can lie brilliantly and without remorse right to your face. So I think we have to be very careful about the information we take on board. We're not going to have to just double check it. We're going to have to triple and quadruple check it.
That's right.
Mm.
That's right. And before we post anything, check it from a few different sources because people just say whatever they want to say. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Do you think culture in general, like society, will be mobilized more quickly too? Like we'll become a very mobile society. We already are, but even more so.
Definitely, because Gemini is very, very mutable. It's all about movement and quick movement and sudden. And Uranus, all of a sudden, something can happen that we didn't even expect or see coming because people are just suddenly on the move for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Um, that desire to feel really mobile. Like Gemini is quite a restless energy, and
Mm.
Uranus is really going to heighten that. Even in the body, it will be more challenging to be really grounded because this is not a very grounded energy.
Mm.
I remember when Uranus was first moving into Taurus, 6, 7 years ago, I was getting images along the lines of, Taurus is earth and like a tree sinking its roots into the earth, with Uranus, sky god, connecting us to knowledge from the cosmos. We can receive that knowledge and process it well if we're really grounded and rooted in our
Mm.
body and in the earth and here in physical life. Uranus is Gemini is just all up there,
Yeah.
which is both exciting, but it can get very, very ungrounded and really nervous system burnout
Mm.
can be a very real thing medically with Uranus in the sign of Gemini. We're going to have to really take care with that one.
Yeah.
Also, as you're probably very aware, this could be an incredibly interesting, to say the least, time in terms of um, our intergalactic brothers and sisters and visitors, because the sky's the limit with Uranus going through Gemini.
Yeah.
And when Uranus is in Gemini every 84 years, there is also rapid new information comes in, and technological advances that come in really fast.
Yeah. New terminology, I'm thinking, new grammar,
Yep.
like a new collective grammar that's um because we've got a Gemini, so we've got based on speed, and interconnection, and inventiveness, So I don't know if we're going to be speaking the same language, Babula.
I know. And there's going to be a period of a few years over the next couple of years before the end of this decade when Uranus in the early degrees of Gemini will make a number. It's actually 5 exact trines over about 3 years.
Mm,
Pluto in early Aquarius, and Uranus rules Aquarius. That is one powerful heck of a combination of energies. It's like, buckle up, everybody, because things are going to be happening at a very fast rate. And I know that sounds exhausting. We're all a bit exhausted from the speed at which everything's already been happening.
mm,
Um, but I think there's going to be a lot of breakthroughs, like cracking information open that's been withheld from the human race for a long time. I
mm.
think a lot of things are going to crack open,
Yeah.
which
Int-
is a good thing. It has to happen.
yes, we will see.
Yeah,
That's for sure. I think, I think with a lot of new things though, new ways of living, I suppose, thinking, creating. With that can come a lot of sense of instability.
yeah,
So we have to be quick on our feet, which
yeah.
Gemini is, to be able to navigate the whole, the new technology, the ideologies. They're going to be in excess of all that. And I often see adverts on social media saying, if you're not using AI, you're going to be left behind. I'm thinking, oh my God, quick, I've got to know that stuff, because I really want to know that stuff and how to use it. And then therefore, the more you know, the more you can pick up on the pitfalls.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, because it's here whether we like it or not. I personally don't like it, but it's here,
Yeah.
and yeah, so and remember, Neptune's moved into Aries,
Mm.
and Pluto's moved into Aquarius, and Uranus is moving into Gemini.
Yeah.
And so these are very new, very different dynamics to what we've been living with in the last few years. Very different energy, altogether different. It's
Mm.
all fire and fire and air is more upward moving and more outward moving, whereas earth and water is more the yin kind of downward energy. So it's an incredible changes. And, I know so many people think, God, when is it all going to slow down? And when are we going to catch our breath?
Not going to.
No, we have to keep adjusting, as you said
Mm.
before, and adapting to this and releasing and letting go of our attachments to the way things were, that's because in the bigger picture, this is a massive news cycle. I'm talking about thousands and thousands of years. And, we are shifting into something very different and very new. And it's bumpy. It's a bumpy ride.
Mm.
But, we're not going back to the way things were.
No. And
No,
even though you can look out the window and go, well, the breeze is blowing and there's cars on the street and you can go to the supermarket and a lot of things appear to stay the same, but
yeah,
actually if you dig deeper, they're not.
that's right.
The environmental processes are changing. The way we deal with buying things is changing. A lot of people do their grocery shopping online. People the way they pay for things is changing. And even though we're still doing those fundamental things, they are now quite different.
That's right.
And I think because we see it as still doing the same thing, need to milk the cows and make the butter, but they're done differently now.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like with these changes into the air and fire signs, again, we need to, find move with that and open to that because that's how it is. But at the same time, how do we self-nurture, self-care, be grounded in the simple, practical things of life, to keep some sense of our feet on the ground,
Yeah.
because that's a lot of big energy, which has a huge impact on our nervous system, on our chakras, on our electrical circuits in our body, on our auric field, which is all ruled by Uranus, all that stuff, actually. Um, and particularly with Uranus and Gemini. So it's very important. It's like the antidote to all that, if you like, is earthing.
Yeah. And I think also because we're talking about Cancerian energy is hold your family and friends close.
That's right.
I think that's really helpful because they can help you snap out of things, come back to reality, get grounded, and and feel nurtured and loved at the same time.
That's right. And have someone sit you down and make you a cup of tea or something. I mean, just really simple things like that. And we do that for others and letting other people do it for us sometimes.
Mm.
Yeah. I know it is very, very dynamic. Do you know, I looked at my notes. I made a couple of quick notes because things sort of come to me and I wanted to get down. And I was thinking about Mars in Virgo before because Mars is in Virgo now for some weeks, certainly throughout the rest of June and I think for pretty much most of July. And I want to come back and speak more about July in a minute. Um, Mars in Virgo, as I was thinking about that, something came to my mind, a memory of a book that I read. God only knows why this book came to me and I read it at such a tender young age of about 18. But I read a book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by a
Yes.
man called Robert Persig.
Yep.
And I didn't understand it all at the time, but it had a big impact on me.
Mm.
And it was a deeply philosophical book. It was a treatise on Zen, but it was about his journey across America on his motorcycle with his son. And but it was about the philosophy of regular maintenance on his bike, regular, and he knew how his bike worked. He knew it mechanically inside out. He traveled with his tools and he was constantly fine tuning and keeping it. And he was noticing other bike riders weren't taking care of their machinery and they'd end up in all sorts of problems and bother and it costing them even more money to repair. But it was profoundly philosophical, very Zen-like. And it's a strange thing to read at such a young age all those years ago, but I did read it. And it reminds me of Mars in Virgo,
Mm.
taking care of all the little things and the repairs that need to be done. Like we had our under the sink water filtration system. Every year, someone comes and changes the filters and so on. And he pulled it out, he opened it all up and said, oh, and it's getting on in years. It's cracked, a significant cracks. And I said, oh, that's not a problem, is it? He said, yes, it is. He said, to fix it would really cost you as much as a new one. You really need a new one. So then I had to fork out a whole pot of money. But, it's that sort very Mars in Virgo. And Mars had just gone into Virgo.
Mm.
And so we have to act on those sorts of things and work on maintenance and repair and um, keeping things in good running order. And
Yeah.
what does that mean in our life? What does that mean in terms of our body or our work or our job? Mars insists that we actually have to take action and do something about that. So it's so interesting that that book came to my mind when I was thinking about Mars in Virgo.
Yeah. And you're just reminding me to say that if you've had a health issue that's been niggling you and you think, oh no, I won't deal with that, it'll settle, it'll be fine. Go to the doctor and just get it checked anyway.
Yeah,
Action.
exactly.
Take action.
Exactly.
Mm,
Because I'm now on a real program to help my body fully recover from what it's been through in the last few months. So I'm seeing a new naturopath. I'm seeing a new acupuncturist. They've directed me to a new doctor because I've never been happy with a doctor. So I feel like I'm making changes to my diet, which was pretty good, but no, we need to adjust it. That's not going to help you. You need to move it. So, this is very Mars in Virgo,
yeah. Mm,
taking positive action towards improvement, which is what Virgo is all about. It's all about repair and improvement.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, where are we at?
Where are we at? So I think let's have a little bit of a scan over July. So the 7th of July, okay. 5th of July, Mercury turns retrograde.
Mm.
7th of July, Uranus goes into Gemini. 11th of July, we have the full moon in Capricorn, 18 degrees Capricorn. 13th of July, 2 days later, Saturn turns retrograde at almost 2 degrees of Aries.
Can you just back that up? What did you say? The full moon? Did you say Capricorn?
Yes, because the sun will be in Cancer and the full moon will be at 18 degrees of Capricorn.
Oh, I've got that wrong. Better write that down. Yes, thank you.
Okay, yeah, 18 degrees of Capricorn opposite the sun,
Yep,
18 degrees Cancer.
thank you.
Then 2 days later, Saturn, the ruling planet of Capricorn, will turn. So on the full moon in Capricorn, Saturn will be stationary, about to turn retrograde. 5 days later, on the 18th, Mercury will turn retrograde in Leo. And on the 31st of July, Chiron will turn retrograde. So in July, we have Neptune, Saturn, Mercury, and Chiron all turning retrograde. Now, this has been happening a lot in the last few years, where in the second half of the year, for a number of months, we have a whole bunch of planets all in retrograde motion.
Wow.
Yeah. And, retrograde planets um, are always about digging deeper. I'm slowing. Slowing things down, going back over old ground, old territory. Um, really deeper inquiry into things, that sort of thing. And when there are a number of planets retrograde, and of course Mercury is going to be in the mix as well, it's not a time of forward momentum.
Mm,
It's a time to review and reconsider and, look deeper. Um, and and we have Uranus going through into Gemini. So it's a lot happening in July.
mm,
So it's, even though Uranus is injecting this incredible new energy, there's all these other planets, coming to a stop and going back
right.
over old ground.
Yeah. Oh, great.
I know, I know. So I would really recommend that this is not a time to be launching important new projects.
No.
It really isn't. It's to keep doing your research, all those words that start with the prefix re, to return, to revise, to research,
Mm,
reevaluate. Great for all of that. If anyone's doing research on anything, fantastic.
yeah.
And then later in the year, one by one, as they start to move forward again, there's a sense of, okay, now we're ready to begin to move this thing forward, whatever this thing is.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yippee-ki-yay.
I I know.
Ah,
Big watershed year 2025.
isn't it? I mean, I knew it would be.
Yep.
And people have said to me, like, the little astrology that I know, they've said, what's 2025 shaping up to be? I said, well, let's just think about 2026.
That's right.
Let's just do your best and focus on next year.
That's right. And remember, this is a 9 year, the number of completion. It's also the year of the snake, as well as all these incredible planetary shifts occurring throughout 2025. So it's a strong year.
Yes. Yeah.
And, so many people, we know ourselves included, have had, challenges, and some people very, very strong challenges. And, decisions are having to be made, choices are having to be made, we're just having to deal with life and what it brings, because it's all in service to some kind of deeper evolutionary process.
I'll tell myself that when I look in the mirror every day.
Right. We are evolving. Doesn't
Evolution show.
feel like it.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Anyway, there's a lot to deal with, and we just, like I said before, we have to be quick on our feet, adapt, adjust, and get on with it.
And as Ram Dass so magnificently said, be here now is the
Yes.
answer to everything.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Babula. That's a lot to cogitate on, that's for sure. And everyone, if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to like it, share it if you think you have friends who are interested, and subscribe to get the notices every time these are posted on the YouTube channel. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you again, Babula.
Pleasure, Cheryl. And remember, if the affairs of the world are all getting too much, just turn on YouTube and watch Itchy Boots, and you'll get some wonderful relief from all of that drama.
Yes, speaking of Gemini, itchy boots. Okay. All right, everyone. Well, take care, and we will see you next time for the next episode. So bye for now.
Bye, everyone.